I woke up as my ex's bride, but he thinks I killed him. The first thing I felt was the weight of the ring on my finger. Heavy, cold, binding. My hand trembled slightly as I lifted it to my face, the golden band glinting in the soft silvery light that poured through the tall windows. My eyes followed the intricate carvings on the ceiling, down the dark wooden walls, and to the rich crimson curtains that framed the dawn like spilled wine. This wasn't my bedroom. This wasn't my life. The air smelled of lavender and old wood, familiar and foreign all at once, like a melody half remembered from a dream. The sheets beneath me were softer than anything I owned, and the pillow cradled my head like a lover's hand. And that was when I felt it. Warmth beside me. A body. No. Slowly, almost as if I were afraid of shattering whatever fragile grip on reality I had left, I turned my head. There he was, Caleb. Alive. Breathing. So close I could see the rise and fall of his chest beneath the silk of his nightshirt. His hair, dark as midnight, just as I remembered, spilled across the pillow, a few strands brushing against his cheek. Even in sleep, his features were sharp, unforgiving, high cheekbones, a straight nose, a jaw that clenched as if warding off demons. My heart stopped. Or maybe it raced. I couldn't tell. The blood in my veins felt both frozen and on fire. I had buried this man. I had stood at his grave. I had mourned him, hated him, regretted him. And now he lay inches away, as real as the air I breathed. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare blink. What was this place? What kind of cruel trick was this? And then his eyelids fluttered open. Ice. That's what his gaze felt like. Pure glacial cold that sliced through me with precision. His eyes were a storm I'd drowned in once before, and now they pinned me, holding me in place as surely as shackles. A slow, mocking smile curved his lips. Surprised, wife? His voice was low, dangerous, like a predator savoring the moment before the kill. Afraid I'll return from the grave to haunt you? Wife. The word echoed inside my skull, louder than any scream. My lips parted, but no sound came out. What could I say? That I didn't understand? That this wasn't supposed to happen? That in the world I knew he was dead, and I was the one everyone thought had killed him? His smile widened at my silence. He leaned closer, just enough that I could feel his breath against my skin, warm, taunting, speechless. That's rare for you. Inside, panic clawed at my chest. I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady. Stay calm. Think. But the room seemed to close in on me, the carved walls turning into a prison. I needed to understand. I needed to escape this nightmare. My gaze darted around, desperate for something, anything, familiar. The window. The door. The mirror across the room. And that's when I saw her. No. Me. The woman in the mirror wore a silk nightgown. White, delicate, too intimate. Her hair spilled over her shoulders in dark waves. But it was her neck that drew my eye. Wrapped around it, like a necklace of shadows, were fine, thread-like marks. As if invisible hands had tied her to someone. As if some ritual had claimed her. My hand rose to my throat, trembling. I felt them. The faint ridges of those lines. Not bruises. Not scars. A bond. A curse. I wanted to scream. But instead, I stared at my reflection, at the stranger who bore my face, and whispered into the silence. What is this place? What is this nightmare? The sun spilled through the stained glass windows, casting fractured rainbows across the polished mosaic floor. Light danced on the silverware, the fine china, the crystal goblets. Everything about the breakfast hall was grand, almost sacred in its opulence. And I felt like an intruder in someone else's life. I sat at the long table, my hands folded tightly in my lap, trying to ignore the curious glances of the servants as they moved gracefully around us. They laid out dish after dish, fresh fruits glistening with dew, warm bread fragrant with herbs, delicate pastries dusted with sugar. The air smelled of citrus and honey. And at the head of the table, like a king in his domain, sat Caleb. His dark hair was brushed back, his attire crisp and immaculate, black with silver embroidery that caught the light just so. His every movement was precise, deliberate. He was the picture of a devoted husband. To anyone who didn't know better, he lifted his goblet in a silent toast, his eyes never leaving mine. That same mocking curve tugged at his lips. "My darling Violet," he said, his voice smooth as velvet but laced with thorns. "You look pale. Did I wear you out last night?" A murmur rippled among the servants. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, shame burning hotter than any fire. I wanted to sink through the floor. I wanted to claw that smirk off his face. But most of all, I wanted to run. Out of this hall, out of this nightmare, away from those eyes that seemed to see straight through me. I forced a tight smile, my fingers digging into the silk of my gown beneath the table. I must not be used to such luxuries, I managed, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Caleb's gaze gleamed with amusement. He leaned back, sipping from his goblet as if savoring the taste of my humiliation. The rest of the meal passed in a blur of silver clinks and quiet footsteps. I could barely taste a thing. My stomach churned too violently for food. Every polite word, every gesture felt like a performance, and I hated that I played along. When the last servant left the hall, closing the heavy doors behind him, the air shifted. The mask fell away. Caleb's smile vanished. His eyes turned sharp, cutting. "You may fool them," he said, his tone low and lethal, "but I know what you are." My breath caught. I stared at him, searching for the man I'd once loved beneath that icy veneer. But he wasn't there. Or maybe he never had been. "And what is that, Caleb?" I asked softly, though my heart raced. "What do you think I am?" He pushed away from the table, rising with a predator's grace. The sound of his boots against the marble echoed like a drumbeat of doom as he crossed the space between us. He stopped inches from my chair, looking down at me as if I were something beneath him, a liar, a traitor, a murderer. The words hit harder than any slap. My throat tightened. My vision blurred for a heartbeat, but I refused to look away. I drew in a slow breath, steadying myself. "I see," I whispered. His gaze flicked over me, as if trying to decipher whether my composure was real or another mask. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his cloak sweeping behind him like a shadow. I stayed frozen for a long moment after he left, the silence pressing against my ears. When I finally rose, my knees felt weak, but my resolve hardened. This wasn't just a different time or place. As I wandered the hall, trying to gather my thoughts, my eyes fell on the tableware. The crest engraved on the goblets, it wasn't the one I remembered. Not the emblem of Caleb's family from my world. It was similar, but twisted somehow. A serpent, where there should have been a lion. A crown with thorns. I traced the design with my fingertip, cold dread seeping through me. This is another world, another version of the nightmare I thought I'd left behind. And here, I was trapped, bound to the man who hated me, the man I'd buried, the man who might yet bury me. The moment the door to my chambers closed behind me, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The walls here seemed to sigh with me, covered in soft cream wallpaper, heavy with age and secrets. A faint scent of dried roses lingered in the air, mingling with the dust of forgotten things. The room was beautiful, in a cold, untouched way. Mirrors lined the walls, tall, arched, framed in tarnished silver. They reflected me from every angle, as if daring me to look closer, as if waiting for me to see what I'd become. I stepped toward one, hesitating only for a moment before facing my reflection. The woman staring back at me wore a gown of pale silk that clung to her too closely, as if trying to bind her to this strange new reality. Her hair was looser than I'd ever worn it, tumbling down her back in dark waves. But it wasn't the gown or the hair that made my breath hitch. It was the marks. Thin, almost delicate lines circled my wrists like bracelets made of shadow. They crisscrossed and wove together, like some invisible thread had stitched me into this role. This marriage. They weren't scars, exactly. Not bruises, either. They were something else. A symbol, a brand, a shackle. I ran my fingers over them, half hoping they'd vanish at my touch. They didn't. If anything, the skin seemed to pulse beneath my fingertips, as if the bond had a heartbeat of its own. "What happened here?" I whispered to no one. I turned away, trying to shake the chill that crept up my spine. My eyes fell on a carved wooden box resting on the vanity. It looked ordinary enough, but something about it called to me. My hand moved before I could stop it, lifting the lid. Inside were folded letters, worn at the edges, ink faded with time. I picked one up, my heart pounding as if I already knew I wouldn't like what I found. The handwriting was mine. But the words weren't. "Caleb is a fool. I'll make him pay for binding me to this wretched life. Let him think I'm his. Soon enough, he'll see what it costs to cross me." I stared at the letter, the words burning themselves into my mind. No. This wasn't me. This wasn't anything I would ever write. And yet, it was my hand, my signature. Letter after letter, the same poison spilled onto the page. The same hatred. The same promises of ruin. What had this other Violet done? What path had she carved that I now walked, blind and unprepared? A soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. I turned as the door opened and a figure stepped inside. Lysandra. Her beauty was as sharp as I remembered. If this world's version of her was so different, I couldn't tell. Pale gold hair pinned neatly beneath a silver comb, eyes the color of storm clouds, lips curved in a smile that didn't touch them at all. She moved with the ease of someone who knew she belonged. "I thought I might find you here," she said sweetly, stepping closer. "It's a lovely room, isn't it? So full of memories." I said nothing, folding the letters and slipping them back into the box. Her gaze followed my movement, and that smile of hers sharpened. "Some women," she said, voice dripping with false warmth, "just don't know when to stop playing innocent." The words sliced deeper than I expected. I met her eyes, refusing to let her see how they stung. "And some women mistake cruelty for strength." I replied softly, but firmly. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of surprise in her expression, as if she hadn't expected me to push back. But then it was gone, replaced by that ever-present smile. "Enjoy your little game while it lasts, Violet," she said, turning to leave. We all know how these stories end. When she was gone, I stood in the silence, the weight of her words settling over me like a fresh chain. Lysandra hates me. And worse, I had no idea how deep that hatred ran, or how far she'd go to see me fall. The night was thick with mist, and the air tasted of rain yet to fall. I pulled my cloak tighter around me, the hem brushing wet grass as I slipped through the garden and toward the edge of the estate. The moon hung low, veiled behind clouds, casting only the faintest silver light on my path. I didn't care where my feet led, only that they carried me away. Away from Caleb's cold gaze, away from Lysandra's venomous smiles, away from the letters that bore my hand but not my heart. I needed answers. The path curved, swallowed by overgrown hedges and tangled vines. And then I saw it, a tower, crumbling at its peak, its stones dark with age and creeping ivy. The windows were cracked, some missing their glass entirely, like empty eyes staring at the night. Drawn by something I couldn't name, I pushed open the heavy door. It groaned in protest, as if warning me back. But I stepped inside. The air was damp, filled with the scent of earth and decay. The floor creaked beneath my boots as I climbed the winding stairs, each step echoing louder than the last in the silence. At the top, the chamber was empty, or so I thought. The wind whispered through the broken windows, carrying with it a voice. Not the wind's voice, a woman's. "You come seeking what you are not ready to find." I spun around. She stood in the shadows, cloaked in a tattered gray robe, her face hidden beneath a deep hood. But I felt her eyes on me, sharp, knowing, ancient. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. a mirror, a guide, a curse. She stepped closer, and the light of the moon caught the edge of her face, pale skin lined with the weight of centuries, lips that seemed carved from stone. Call me what you will. It changes nothing. I swallowed hard. Why am I here? What is happening to me? The woman tilted her head as if considering how much truth I could bear. This knot you wear, she said, gesturing to the marks on my wrists, is not of this life alone. You and he, you dance the same dance in every thread of fate. Her words struck me like a blow. My hands fell to my sides, fingers brushing the bonds I hadn't chosen, the ones that now felt tighter than ever. I don't understand, I whispered. I never wanted this. I didn't choose him. Not this time. Not any time. And yet, here you are. The seer's voice softened, almost kind. Bound and reborn, over and over, as he is bound to you, not by love, not anymore, but by a promise made long ago, a promise twisted into a chain. Who did this to us? She shook her head slowly. That is for you to uncover. But beware, Violet. The past does not wish to be unearthed. And the one who forged your bond watches still? A chill ran through me. The wind howled through the broken glass like a chorus of ghosts. What can I do? I asked, my voice small in the vast, empty space. The seer's eyes seemed to glow in the moonlight. The thread can fray, the chain can break, but only if you have the courage to pull it loose. Before I could speak again, she stepped back into the shadows, and when the wind rattled the tower once more, she was gone, as if she had never been there at all. I stood alone, the night pressing in, the weight of her words settling deep into my bones. The same dance, the same fate, unless I can change it. The grand hall glowed with 100 flickering candles, their light refracted through the massive crystal chandeliers that hung from the arched ceiling like frozen constellations. Music filled the air. Violins, soft and haunting, weaving a melody that seemed both beautiful and tragic. The marble floor gleamed beneath the feet of masked dancers, their laughter like delicate bells, their faces hidden behind silk and gold. And at the center of it all, we danced. Caleb's hand rested firmly at my waist, his touch deceptively gentle. His other hand clasped mine, our fingers intertwined in a grip that felt more like a challenge than a lover's hold. To the watching crowd, we must have seemed the perfect pair, graceful, in sync, a vision of wedded bliss. But under the surface, our every step was a battle, every turn a test of will. Smile, Violet, he whispered, his lips brushing my ear so that no one else could hear the venom in his tone. Or they'll see what a monster you truly are. I kept my head high, my posture flawless, my expression serene, but inside, my heart pounded with rage and sorrow, each beat a reminder of the cage I was trapped in. If I'm a monster, I murmured back, my voice steady, what does that make you? His jaw tensed, though the mask of his charm never slipped. His eyes, however, flashed with something raw, anger, pain, perhaps even doubt. The orchestra swelled, and he spun me beneath the glittering lights, faster than before, as if trying to remind me who led this dance. Around us, the guests watched with polite fascination, their masked faces unreadable. Noblemen and ladies, merchants and dignitaries, all drawn by the spectacle of our union. A marriage that was meant to unite fortunes and families, to inspire envy and admiration. If only they knew the truth that festered beneath the gilded surface. The dance ended, and applause echoed through the hall. Caleb released me with the grace of a gentleman, bowing slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. I curtsied in return, every movement practiced, perfect. Shall we greet our adoring admirers? He asked smoothly, offering his arm. I took it because I had no choice. As we moved through the crowd, the whispers followed us like shadows. Compliments dripped from tongues like honey, but I could feel the undercurrent. Curiosity, suspicion, hunger for scandal. And then came Lysandra. She glided toward us, radiant in a gown of deep emerald, her mask a delicate filigree of silver that only enhanced the sharpness of her smile. You were breathtaking, Violet, she said, voice sweet enough to rot. I've never seen you so composed. Thank you, I replied, inclining my head. One must try to rise to the occasion. Her eyes gleamed. Oh, you rise beautifully, though some might say it's a wonder you can, with such burdens. My fingers curled against the fabric of my gown, but I kept my face smooth, my voice even. Burdens make us stronger, don't they, Lysandra? I imagine you'd know. Her smile tightened, just for a moment, before she recovered. As the night wore on, I watched her work the room, her words subtle and sharp, weaving seeds of doubt and gossip wherever she went. She spoke of my strangeness, of how I'd changed since the wedding, of how Caleb deserved better. And the guests listened, their eyes flicking toward me when they thought I wouldn't notice, their minds eager for a story to tell come morning. I stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching the dancers swirl and spin, their laughter echoing in the vast hall. The weight of my mask, invisible though it was, grew heavier with every passing moment. But beneath it, my resolve hardened. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. I would find a way to break this chain, to free myself from the dance of thorns that bound me to Caleb. And when I did, they would see the truth, about him, about Lysandra, about everything. The music played on, and I stood still, a single thorn among the roses. The forest beyond the estate was quiet, draped in morning mist so thick it softened the world into shapes and shadows. The damp earth muffled our steps, and the only sound was the faint rustle of leaves beneath our boots. I walked beside Caleb, the silence between us heavy with everything unspoken. He hadn't asked me to come. Perhaps he didn't even want me there. But after the endless charade of the ball, I needed air. And perhaps a moment when we weren't on display, when his mask might slip and reveal something real. The path narrowed, hemmed in by ancient trees whose gnarled branches reached toward the sky like pleading hands. The air was cool, laced with the scent of pine and moss. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out, a single, mournful note. Caleb walked ahead, hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid, his gaze fixed on something I couldn't see. I studied him, searching his face for the man I remembered, for any trace of warmth. But all I found was a storm barely held at bay. And then, a crack, soft, sharp, the sound of a twig snapping where no foot should tread. Everything happened at once. A whisper of movement in the trees, the faint gleam of metal, the hiss of a crossbow bolt slicing through the fog. I didn't think. I moved. My body collided with his, shoving him aside as the bolt flew. Pain bloomed along my upper arm, hot, bright, then quickly dulling to a throb as blood seeped into the fabric of my sleeve. We fell hard onto the forest floor, Caleb beneath me, his breath knocked out in a grunt. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. No second shot came. Whoever had lurked in the shadows was gone, swallowed by the mist. Caleb stared up at me, his eyes wide with shock. His hands gripped my shoulders, as if to steady himself, or perhaps to make sense of what had just happened. Why? He breathed, his voice ragged. Why would you do that? After everything. I pushed myself up, wincing as the movement pulled at my injured arm. The bolt had grazed me, tearing the skin but sparing the muscle. A shallow wound, a small price. Because I'm not your enemy, I said, my voice low, fierce. No matter what you think, I never was. He sat up slowly, his gaze fixed on the blood staining my sleeve. His expression, for once, was unguarded. The mask of hatred cracked, and beneath it I saw something I hadn't expected. Confusion. Regret. Fear. But you... His words trailed off, tangled in the storm of his thoughts. I met his eyes, willing him to see the truth. You thought wrong. For a long moment we just sat there, the fog wrapping around us like a shroud. The forest was silent again, as if holding its breath. Finally, Caleb looked away, his shoulders slumping, the weight of his belief, his mistake, settling on him like a stone. I don't understand, he said quietly. I don't understand you. Maybe it's time you tried. I rose, cradling my arm, and turned back toward the path. Behind me, I heard him get to his feet, heard the hesitation in his steps as he followed. The mist parted before us, and for the first time, I felt that maybe, just maybe, the path ahead wasn't as hopeless as it had seemed. The library was the oldest part of the estate, older even than the stone walls that guarded it, older than the twisted oaks that loomed outside its windows. Dust hung thick in the air, stirred by my footsteps as I crossed the room, the soft glow of my lantern casting long shadows across shelves that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. Books lined every inch of space, their spines faded, their titles long forgotten by anyone who still lived. But I wasn't searching for stories or history tonight. I was searching for the truth Caleb refused to see, the truth that haunted me like a ghost. My fingers skimmed along the shelves until they found a small, battered volume tucked behind a row of larger tomes. Its leather cover was cracked, the edges worn soft by time. No title adorned it, but when I opened it, the handwriting inside stopped my breath. It was familiar. Caleb's. Not mine, but his brother's. The entries were dated from years past, during a time I remembered all too well. The days before Caleb's death and the life I thought I'd left behind. My hands trembled as I turned the pages, the words leaping out at me. We must act soon. Caleb's blind trust in her will destroy everything Father built. Lysandra has agreed to help. She's clever. She sees what I see. Together we'll expose Violet for what she is, or at least, what Caleb must believe her to be. He'll thank us one day. When it's over, I swallowed hard, bile rising in my throat. The truth was there in ink and paper. I hadn't betrayed Caleb. I had been framed, my loyalty twisted into a weapon against me. And he had fallen for it, had let it destroy us. I closed the book, pressing it to my chest, as if I could smother the ache that bloomed there. My mind raced. What now? I had proof, but proof could be dangerous. If I showed it to Caleb, would he believe me? Or would he think it just another trick? A creak of the door startled me, and I spun around, hiding the book behind my skirts. It was Elias. He stepped into the room quietly, his dark eyes filled with concern. "My lady," he said, bowing his head, "forgive me. I didn't mean to intrude. I saw your light." I hesitated, then drew a breath. "Elias, I need someone I can trust. Someone who sees what's really happening here." Without hesitation, he crossed the room and knelt before me, one hand resting over his heart. "I am yours to command, my lady," he said simply. "I always have been." His loyalty, so steady, so undeserved, nearly broke me. I reached out, resting my hand lightly on his shoulder. "Then help me," I whispered. "Help me find a way to show Caleb the truth without bringing more ruin down upon us both." Elias rose, his expression resolute. "We will find a way," he promised. "And when we do, those who wronged you will answer for it." I nodded, the weight of the book heavy in my hands, the weight of the past heavier still on my soul. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the faintest spark of hope. But with it came fear. Fear of what truths might cost. Fear of what Caleb would do when he learned how deep the betrayal truly ran. I looked out the window, at the night beyond, and swore to myself, this time, I won't let the past destroy us. The storm raged outside. Wind howling like a beast denied its prey. Rain lashed against the gallery's tall windows, each drop a drumbeat of fury. Lightning split the sky, casting the room in flashes of silver and shadow. The air inside felt just as charged, brittle, electric, ready to shatter. Caleb stood near the window, his back to me, hands braced on the sill, as if holding himself upright against the tempest. His shoulders were tense, his head bowed. The storm beyond the glass seemed a reflection of the one I knew boiled inside him. I stepped closer, heart pounding, the small leather-bound book clutched tightly in my hands. My voice trembled at first but found strength as I spoke. "I found this in the library. I think it's time you read it." He didn't turn. "I'm not interested in more of your lies, Violet." "This isn't mine," I said, firm. "It's your brother's." His words, his hand. and it's time you saw the truth." His head lifted slightly at that. A long silence stretched between us, filled only by the storm's fury. Then, slowly, he turned. His face was pale, drawn, as if he'd fought too many battles, most of them with himself. I crossed the distance between us, placing the book in his hands. Our fingers brushed, and for once, the contact didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt fragile, like something that could break if either of us moved too suddenly. He opened the book. The room seemed to hold its breath. Page after page, I watched his eyes move, saw the color drain from his face as the words cut through him. His brother's schemes, Lysandra's part in it, the plot to destroy what little trust had existed between us. His grip on the book tightened until his knuckles went white. He shut it with a force that echoed through the gallery, the sound as sharp as the crack of thunder outside. He stared at me then, no longer with hatred, no longer with coldness, but with something far more dangerous, regret. I cursed the only woman who never betrayed me. His voice broke on the words, as raw as the storm. Before I could answer, the door burst open. Lysandra strode in, her gown disheveled, her hair damp from the rain. Her eyes blazed, but beneath the fury was something else. Fear. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her gaze flicking to the book in Caleb's hands. "You can't trust her, Caleb. She's twisting things. Can't you see it?" "I see clearly for the first time in years," he said quietly, his tone like ice. "I see what you did. What you both did." She moved toward him, desperate now. "We were trying to protect you. She would have ruined you. Everything Father built, you would have thrown it away for her. We saved you from yourself." Caleb's expression hardened. "You destroyed me. You destroyed us." Lysandra's eyes darted to me, her mask slipping completely. "You think this changes anything? No one will believe you. You're nothing here. A stranger in your own skin." She lunged for the book, but I stepped in front of Caleb, blocking her path. My voice was steady, stronger than I felt. "It's over, Lysandra. The lies end tonight." For a moment, she hesitated. Then, with a sound like a wounded animal, she turned and fled, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. The storm's roar filled the space she left behind. Caleb stood motionless, the book held against his chest as if it might anchor him. I drew a breath, my heart racing, and met his gaze. "If we go forward," I said softly, "it will be as equals. No more chains, no more lies. That's the only way." For a heartbeat, I thought he might refuse. That pride or guilt or fear would close the distance between us once more. But then, slowly, painfully, he nodded. "No more chains," he echoed, as the storm began, at last, to break. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky washed clean by the night's fury. Soft hues of rose and gold stretched across the horizon, chasing away the last remnants of darkness. The air was cool, fresh, carrying the scent of rain and earth, a promise of renewal. I stood on the balcony, the stone cold beneath my bare feet, my hands resting on the railing as I watched the first rays of sunlight spill over the distant hills. The estate lay quiet below, its towers and rooftops glistening with morning dew. For the first time in what felt like forever, the world seemed still. Footsteps approached behind me. I didn't need to turn to know it was Caleb. His presence was familiar now, no longer a shadow of dread, but something heavier, something real. He stopped beside me, silent at first, as if afraid to break the fragile peace the dawn had brought. "I didn't think you'd be here," he said quietly. I couldn't sleep. I kept my gaze on the horizon. Too much to think about. He nodded, the gesture small, almost uncertain. "So much has changed. And yet, it feels like we're only just beginning." I glanced at him then, studying his face in the soft light. The lines of tension were still there, but softer now. His eyes no longer burned with anger, but with something else, something like understanding, like regret. "We're not who we were yesterday," I said. "And we won't be who we were before that." He looked out at the rising sun, his expression thoughtful. "I spent so long believing the worst. I let it poison everything. I let it poison us, and I let myself be trapped by fear, I admitted. Fear of what you thought of me. Fear of what I might become if I fought back. The breeze lifted a strand of my hair, and he reached out, brushing it gently behind my ear. The touch was tentative, like a question. No more fear, he said. No more chains, I agreed. We stood together side by side as the light grew stronger, casting warmth over the balcony, over the estate, over us. There were no easy answers waiting for us beyond this moment. No sudden happily ever after. But for the first time, there was honesty between us, and with that, the faintest hope. This time, I whispered. Watching the sun climb higher, I choose my fate. And so does he. The dawn welcomed us both.